So sometimes it's easy to be happy and excited and have a lot of joy and it just comes so free. And then other days, not so much. It seems like everything around you is coming at you. So today we're going to talk about how you can get joy accessible to you. So accessible, in fact. It's a little crazy. So talking with my friend Katherine Backstrom. She is the author of Crazy Joy. And check out this title, Finding Wild Happiness in the World That's Upside Down. Mary, thank you for hanging out with me, girl.
Thank you for having me. And like, how real is that? I do feel like we're living in the upside down sometimes.
Yes, like Stranger Things, absolutely.
Yes,
like I would not be surprised.
There's this version of the planet that God intended, and we're living on the other version of that.
We are. Demogorgons all over the place.
Everywhere.
Right? It's like all the like corn is just like going to pot, and then there's this weird like spidery web stuff. Okay, maybe not that bad. Maybe it's not that bad.
Listen, but I'm tracking with you. It is a hard world to find joy in. And that's why I wrote an entire book on it. I was like, what is something that people say about me that I want to address? So I'm kind of known for my silly videos. Like, people find me in my most unhinged moments, laughing in the camera, telling my funny stories. And so I became known as this woman that makes people laugh, and they associate joy with laughter, which is true. But I felt like I wasn't being 100% real. I was like, I feel like people are seeing the 5% of the time that I have got this unhinged laughter, and they're not seeing the underbelly of what my real life is. And so this book was kind of like a confession, like, hey, there's a lot more to me than these like moment of bright joy and laughter, but I still believe in joy. I still think it's accessible to everybody. And so I put it all out there.
Yeah, that's so true, because it does feel like it's so easy to kind of become like your surroundings. You know what I mean? Like if you just enter into this space and the energy will kind of like seep into you. That's what I feel like. I love being working from home. I love having my own workspace because I can kind of command that energy, you know?
Yes.
But it's just so easy to become part of the world. I mean, we're told that we're in the world, but not of the world. But that's difficult when we're in the world to not become of the world, because it seems like no matter where you go, there's like this low energy.
Yeah, it just pulls it out of you.
Yeah, those energy vampires, you know, it's just like pulling it down.
Yes, that's such a good term. I love that.
So how in this world that's upside down, tell me what's so upside down about this world.
I think it's what we believe is going to make us happy. I think if I could pinpoint one thing that's truly causing us confusion, is the expectations that we hold in our hearts. So a very good example of this for me is I grew up in church, and I grew up being a youth group. I was a youth group girl. I prayed for my husband, girl. I was so excited to meet my husband when I went to college. I was that girl.
All right, when did you start praying for him?
Oh, like I was 13. Like,
oh, wow. Okay. So I was 9. Hello. Here we are. Like little youngsters. Well, that's because I came across a romance novel and I was reading and I'm like, I kind of want this. Seriously, not even lying. Oh, I don't even know. Like my parents owned a bookstore. Oh, no, it wasn't a Christian one. Trust me. It was spicy.
I read spicy books now.
Oh my gosh. But here I am, like a 9-year-old, and I like stumbled. I was in a supply closet, right? In my parents' bookstore. And I came across this spicy book. And I'm like, hold up. What is this?
I need this in my life.
Yeah, if I can remember what that book was, I will ship it to you. As a matter of fact, I might just sell it on my store.
I will send you my current spicy book, which is Akatar, A Court of Thorns and Roses. We'll exchange. So
we'll exchange our spicy.
Yes.
But that's literally what I'm like, I kind of want this. And so I'll like at that age, I'm like, I'm bringing everything to God. Like I've always brought I'm like, God, can I have a like hot, sexy, spicy relationship like this? So
I need it to be hot, sexy, spicy, and holy would be great.
Holy would be awesome.
Oh, it's like a bonus. Like if he could play guitar, God, I'd really appreciate that, because we also need that. Right. I mean,
yes. We need some musical talent. And if he like played sports too, if you could make his sweat smell good instead of bad, Awesome. Thank
Okay.
you.
So, girl, I was obsessed with this idea of being married. And I met my husband young. We got married very young. And then I ran up against the reality of marriage. And it was my first, like, not my first, but one of many moments in life where I was like, that's it. Okay. But the expectation was the problem, not marriage. The expectation was so upside down because I thought that my husband was going to step into my life, swoop me off my feet, and fix everything forever. That was it. That was end game. You get
Yeah.
married happily
Yeah.
ever after, right? So then you get into marriage and like finances are hard and his poop stinks and everything is awful.
Wait, your
And
husband's poop stinks.
I
What?
know. Nobody
Oh,
wants me.
honey.
Nobody wants
Oh, we got to do something about it. I'll send you some supplements with that book. We'll get that fixed, okay?
Okay, another bottle. Just send me another one. But I do feel like what's really upside down is it's not even the experiences, it's the expectations of what they're supposed to bring to our life.
Right.
And so really it's a matter of like recalibrating those expectations through the filter of what God is saying this actually should be, right? Marriage is not supposed to be like you are a complete person. So my husband was never intended to come in and fix all of me. That requires me doing that work. And so now I'm in therapy and I'm fixing myself. He's in therapy. He's constantly fixing himself. And our marriage is just so full. It took 16 years to get here, though. And I feel like that's just one small example of what it can look like to, if you're in the world and your expectations are this, then you're going to lose joy from the get-go because you're going in with the wrong expectation. So I feel like that's mostly what's upside down is what we think is going to fulfill us. And it's almost always the opposite.
It's so true because when you argue with reality, you lose 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And so instead of like the arguing, what I love to hold this energy that I can feel anything and I can work through anything and this is all working for me. So every time you walk into a situation like that internal, hold on. Sorry.
You're really feeling it. If you do not make that a gift later, I will. That is so.
Oh, that will be a gift later. Okay, that's so funny. But that internal thermostat, I guess, is what I would like instead of a thermometer where we're just like kind of revealing what the temperature is in this world.
Right.
We can be that thermostat and say, you know what? No matter what I walk into, God's still God, and He's still working it out. And what if I could only get to that destination by walking this path? Am I willing to walk it? 100%. Like that idea that it should be different. What happens is we should all over ourselves. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, why, what happened? Like, why am I so,
you know what? There's this uniquely American problem too. I feel like, and it might be modern, but I can only speak for living here where we are dreamers, right? Like our country is one of dreamers. We love to we can achieve big things. That's the American dream is like do the most, get the most. And I think because we are raised with that, which isn't at its core a bad thing, it can become something else. It becomes everything's out there waiting to be great.
Right.
And we have a very hard time, what I've realized collectively as a country, with contentment, with being in the right now. Even me right now, if you were to ask me, am I happy? I'm like, the very first thing I'll tell you is like, well, I'm heavier than I want to be. But like, what if this body is only here for 6 more months? Like we have a very hard time living in the right now as if it's all we have. And I think that's another piece of that joy journey is learning to say, okay, I'm a big dreamer, but let me make this moment smaller. Let me be in it. Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to focus on this year is my word this year. Everybody does different things, whether they do resolutions or words or whatever. I'm working on contentment. I think contentment is a big pillar. If you're trying to build joy in your life, that's like one you've got to start with big time.
You really do. And that is 100% always accessible. Here's the problem. And I mean, this is what you're talking about right here, Mary, is holding this idea that my contentment lies over there. I'm on the way to my contentment, you know?
Yes.
And even this idea of, okay, I'm going to work on myself till I get to that place where I'm okay is still so screwed up and backwards because even in that middle of working on yourself, it's still accessible. There's joy available. And saying that we're walking into joy, you lost it. It's already there. It's already, you are sufficient right now.
You're reminding me so much. So my husband is an emergency medicine doctor. We got married in undergrad. And so I got to watch him like walk through the expectation of what's it going to be like to be a doctor, what it's really like to be a doctor. And he came home one day and he just had this like sad face. I was, what is going on? Like, what's wrong? He goes, you know what the hardest thing is for me in the ER is people come in and I have to give them these terrible diagnoses. And almost 100% of the time they look at me and they're like, but I just retired, or I just got married, or I just did this thing. It's like, but I've been waiting for this moment to live. Right. And now it's being taken away. And it really, that was like such a gut punch to me, because it wasn't the fact that they were sick. It's the fact that they realized in that moment, but I've been waiting all this time to get started living. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I try and keep that in mind, because right now I'm a mom with 2 young kids. How old are yours?
I'm in my 50s. I have 7 kids. They're all like 30 to 17.
You're incredible.
I got grandbabies.
So you can relate to every part of this journey, right? But
yes,
I'm
ma'am.
in the journey right now where it's like, I've got one that's still 6, so she's still kind of babyish, and then my heart's aching because she's losing the fat in the cheeks. And then I've got one that's like, he's playing Xbox. He's like, bro this and bro that. And I'm like, the baby is gone from that one. And there's this ache to like want to go back or go forward. Like, what are they going to be like here? Like, I miss what they were then.
Yeah.
But like, I've got to snuggle up next to that little stinky 9-year-old and like love him in the bro phase in order to truly experience joy as a mother. I feel like motherhood is just packed full of joy, but it's like little nuggets that are hidden in moments that look like everyday life, and sometimes frustrating ones, right?
Yeah, totally. I'll never forget the time that my second oldest daughter, she has babies of her own, right? And she was little, she was like 11, 12, and I remember, that whole phase growing up, and you're giving them baths and you're taking care and you're helping them become independent. And I remember I heard her in the shower and I knocked on the door. I said, hey, do you need some help? She said, no, I got it. And I remember in that moment, Mary, I said, when was the last time I washed her hair? Like, I couldn't remember, like, when was the last time there's that time where you're sitting beside the bathtub and they have the toys all over, they're playing, like, okay, let me wash your hair. And you rinse out the hair with the clean water. And I couldn't remember when the last time was I washed her hair. And I thought, I wish I could have remembered. I would have treasured it. I would have held it more. It would have been a sacred moment for me.
When's the last time I carried her in from the car? Right.
Right.
We
those
don't know
last
when that
moments.
last time's going to be. It just stops. And I remember being so angry when I was first a mother and I had some postpartum depression, and older mothers would come up to me and be like, it happened so fast, enjoy it now. And I'd be like, enjoy it now. I'm covered in poop. And like, it's hard because sometimes wisdom, it can feel like it falls flat, right? Like, you're not experiencing what I'm experiencing, and therefore I don't want to hear what you have to say. But my God, those women were right.
They really are. I'm telling you, they are.
They're right. And it's hard to hear it.
It's hard to hear it, but I'd rather for young moms to hear it now, because I think that was what going through as my children were when they were young. Mm-hmm. I always would try to remember that these are the good days. Like even in the middle of the muck and the poop and all that, they are the good days. So when the opportunity opened, I would always try to calm myself. Not that I always did it, right? Not that I was always successful. I would try to remember they are my magnum opus. They are the most important thing. So I would try to keep that in mind as they were little growing up, because I always thought to myself, I would rather, like, the biggest price I'm going to pay is regret. So I don't want to pay that price. So 100%. I'm willing to do what I'm willing to have the messy house. I'm willing to have the disorganization. I'm willing to have a bit of chaos now and then, because I'm not willing to pay regret.
you know what this whole conversation makes me think of? Because I'm always trying to balance this tension of being hopeful, which I think that's the note that you always strike, but also not being like toxically positive, like dismissing the struggle, right? And where does joy fit in that tension? Like, I don't want to be that mom that's like, oh, it goes by so fast, you know? And I also don't want to be the mom that's like, shut up, I am over here struggling. Like, there's got to be this place in the middle where we can feel what's real. And in my book, at the very last bit of it, and this is not too much of a spoiler, I can share this with you. I talk about how like joy comes bubbling up in sometimes the darkest moments. And I don't know if you're a Southerner, but almost everybody has at least seen Steel Magnolias, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You know, when like Sally Fields is in the graveyard and Shelby is gone, and she is just walking around and she has this panic attack where she's like laughing, but then she's sobbing, and then she just loses it, and then somebody pushes Weezer up and they're like, here, just hit Weezer, just give her a
Weezer.
whack. Yeah, hit Weezer. And she just starts cackling. And I was like, you know what that reminds me of? It's that two different stories here. Hang with me, because this is my ADHD and it's totally how I write books. So if your listeners are listening and they're like, where is this going? Trust me, this is how the whole book is written. So just get comfy. My husband's a surfer and he is obsessed with this story called Mavericks. It's about, it's these waves that surfers can ride, and they're incredible, but they're dangerous because you can get stuck under the wash. It's like a washing machine that holds you down. And there was this moment in the movie about Mavericks where the kid is stuck in the wash, but he knows that he's going to have to come up for one gasp of air before he's pushed back down for another like 2 minutes, right? So that's how the cycle of these waves works. But he's been trained. So he's underneath and he's struggling and he's like about to die. And then he feels himself being pushed up and he gets up there and he takes that big gasp of air. And to me, that was almost like that moment in the graveyard. Joy is like that. It comes gasping for air in the hard times. And so for me, like to tell people like, look, I know joy sounds like something that's really, really hard to get to, but it's like you have to train for the hard times. You have to be ready to come up and gasp for air. And sometimes that looks like dark humor, like here, hit Weezer. Sometimes it looks like today's, like you and I were talking about this. You asked me, how are you doing? Like before we did the podcast, I was like, frankly, I'm like, that was like a real connected moment. I needed to talk to somebody. And sometimes claiming our joy and our struggle is just like, I'm going to choose this moment to connect with you because I have a moment. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be present in this moment. And I think if I could just impart anything at all in this podcast, which I'm sorry, I'm like verbal vomit on you today.
No, it's good. It's good.
It's just about being present. It's about like seeking the connection in the moments that we have right now. And they don't have to be perfect or pretty. Like, we were talking about like, oh, enjoy this. It goes by so fast. Like the reality is they go by fast. What do they say? The nights are long, but the years are short, I think. We have to remember that in the long night, there's still joy to be found because there's a reason all these moms look back and they're like, I miss that.
Right. I'm not willing to miss it.
Huh?
I am not willing to miss it and that's what I think we miss it only because we have the wrong idea of what it looks like.
Yes.
Like we miss it because we think, I'm sitting on the sofa and it's clean and we're reading books and no one has a stinky diaper and we're laughing together like, okay, that could exist. However, most likely the joy exists right in that moment with the mess on the floor, with the spilled milk, with the dirt and with the chaos, because joy and chaos, they're not enemies. They actually can get along pretty well together,
Right. Absolutely.
And so in the middle of chaos, if we're waiting for the chaos to leave for joy to step in, we're forgetting that both can sit at the table and have a great time together. Like that can be part of it.
You nailed it. I think you nailed it. That is 100% it. It's like sitting at the table with all the things. Like this is it.
All the things.
These are my guests. This is what I'm living with.
You know what? One thought I always like to go to is, what if it could just be fun?
I love that.
Like seriously, think about everything. Think about the finance problems. Think about the mess. Think about the moves. Think about the teen angst. Think about the toddler, turmoil. Think about all that. What if it could just be fun? What if it's a whole symphony and we have to have all the different notes in order to create this beautiful orchestra of just fun? And are you willing for all of it?
I think the best evidence that what you're saying is true is the fact that we have dark humor at all. Like the fact that we can look sideways at a funeral and be like, this is hilarious. Like they're telling this story about grandma. Like I'll sit at a funeral. My great grandmother was the meanest lady you've ever met. And they sat up there talking about how she was so sweet and all these sweet moments. Everybody in the church is looking at each other like, we loved her, but is this the same person? And if you can't have dark humor, to me, that is the proof that God gave us joy. That is like in the face of it all, making it fun, choosing to show up.
So this is how I know you and I are cut from the same cloth. Okay, are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
My great aunt, your grandmother has nothing on her. She is the meanest person who has ever existed on this planet. So when she passed away and went to be with Jesus, I think. So here's the funeral, right? And here's the pastor. She didn't go to that church. She didn't show up. And so here's the pastor talking about this wonderful woman and going on to be with the Lord. And and my daddy comes up there and he starts talking. He said, well, I'm not sure which Gladys you're talking about, but this Gladys, everyone in the church lost it, like laughing so hard because everyone knew. She was a pill, right?
Yeah.
And so that's how I know we're cut from the same cloth.
And they
loved her.
Right?
Loved her. Yes. They loved her for all the obscenities and all that, like yelling that you're walking through her living room, and loved her for it.
Yep. I meet with my pastor regularly right now. I go to therapy. But I also go talk to my pastor because we got all these different things moving in us, right? And I got to fix my spirit too. So I'm doing that. And we were talking about funerals because funerals entertain me for some reason. I'm very fixated on that subject right now. And he was like, it's always a bummer to me as a pastor because people will come up to me and they'll tell me the funniest stories about their loved one. And then they immediately go, but you can't tell that at the funeral. He's like, why? Why? That's the story to tell at a funeral.
That's the story to tell. Absolutely. Because that's authentic and that's real. And I think that's what we're getting down to. Like your book, Crazy Joy, I think it mostly speaks of authenticity. And I love that. Like there's joy right in the middle of it. So what would you say to someone right now who's like, just one last thing you could tell them is you can find joy. It is crazy. And here's one way that you can leverage that today. What is one thing they could do?
One of the wisest things I've ever read, I believe was Eleanor. It may have been Theodore Roosevelt, but it's one of the Roosevelts. And they said, comparison is the thief of joy. So it's very hard to define joy. I've learned that. I wrote a whole book and I still can't give you one two word definition for it. It's just not possible. But it's very easy to identify what the thieves of joy are. So if I was to tell you one thing, it would be to stop looking elsewhere. Stop looking left and right because you can build joy. I think it happens naturally. But what we have a hard time with is we submit to these thieves in our lives. We're like, I'm happy until I look at what so-and-so's marriage looks like. I'm happy until I see what this other person's car is. I mean, there's a million different ways to play that game. But I would say if you want to start seeing an immediate, take one of the vampires of energy out of your life. Take one of the joy sucks. You want to see some immediate joy growth in your life, stop comparing your life to other people's.
I love it.
It's not the suffering Olympics. It's not the success Olympics. It's just life. And that's maybe the first thing you have to accept in that journey. Oopsie. Sorry.
I love that. No, that's totally cool. I love that so much. Mary, thank you.
Thank you. I had to reject a phone call, so sorry. The very end there was
it was an energy vampire anyway, so I'm glad you did that.
Yes, it was. Reject.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us. And remember, guys, Crazy Joy is a brilliant book, and what a brilliant author. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
having me. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.